Hello and welcome to the final episode in this season of Learning Leadership 321 with myself, Brian Webster. And today we're joined by the amazing Claire Pearce. Now, I've known Claire for many years and she currently works as the Executive Director of Nursing and Midwifery at the health board I work at in Scotland, NHS Tayside. So her full bio is on the accompanying blog where you can check out Claire's career to date, which is very experienced and very expanding. What Claire has done in her bio, you might notice, is be quite humble and a bit modest. So what Claire hasn't done is talked about her amazing leadership experience and her journey. And she's one of the type of leaders who are very approachable, very down to earth, very human. And I say that just because I've been able to work alongside Claire on a few bits and bobs. She's let me shadow her before, which was an amazing opportunity. And she's always been there to reach out to if I've needed to ask a silly question, which isn't something you would maybe normally imagine a nurse director of a big NHS board having the capacity to do. So Claire's a really amazing leader, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks. So, hi Claire, thanks very much for joining me this morning on this last episode in the season of Learning Leadership 321. It's great to have you with us. How are you doing
Thanks
today?
very much for inviting me, Brian. Really looking forward to it.
No, that's okay. So, well, we'll start with a wee bit of an icebreaker, if that's all right. So, um, it's a bit of a icebreaker on gratitude. So, what's made you smile today, Claire? And I know it's quite early in the morning, so you've maybe not had a chance to think, but what's made you smile today and why?
Well, I live in Edinburgh and I travel to Dundee every day. So I was driving up to Dundee today, and one of my direct reports has just come back from holiday. So I texted her this morning and said, "Do you want to have a quick chat on the way up the road, just
Yeah.
to sort of touch base?" So we had the chat, etc. And what really made me smile is her husband and her have just been on holiday. He's a doctor in Edinburgh,
Mhm.
and they've both gone back to work for the first day back yesterday. And she had said, and he said to me, "I'm getting looking at my pension again because I'm retiring in 19 days." So she said,
Oh, wow.
uh, he's looking at his pension again. And I says, "Is he even 50?" And she went, "No, so you just need to put it away." So it just made me laugh about that whole coming back from your annual leave, whatever you're doing, coming back from your annual leave, and suddenly it's that big weight of going back into work. But at the end of the first day, you're back there and you're all pumped up. But that morning of going back is one of these, everybody has that slump. So
Definitely,
that
yes.
made me smile. It made me smile that he's not even 50.
Oh, lucky him. No, I get that because it's like you'll remember from being a sort of a clinical practicing nurse, and I used to think, God, I can't remember how to be a nurse after 2 weeks off.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
okay, so the next wee icebreaker is just a quick quote, and I just want your 10-second response. So it says, as a leader, every day presents an incredible chance to make a meaningful difference in someone's life. So what do you think about that as a leader?
True. Absolutely true.
Okay,
Absolutely
perfect.
true.
Oh,
Particularly in healthcare, because, and I've thought this all my career, this is my work day, but this is for most of the patients who are here, this is a big day for them. Whereas for you and I, this is our work, but it's such a privilege to be able to be part of hopefully making somebody's day better, whether it's to get hold of their pain control, whether it's to see them in the clinic, whether it's to go in and help them wash, whether it's to plan their meds review, whatever it is, it's an important, very, very important to people.
yeah, definitely. Good, like that. Okay, though, well, we'll jump right in. So it's leadership 321. So we start with your 3 points on leadership for any sort of up and coming leaders, any new leaders, or anyone that's thinking, what is leadership, in nursing? So we know that the NMC expects all our new graduates to be leaders and our current graduates to be leaders. So what's your tips for everyone really that is a leader?
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I guess I have thought about this in terms of when we briefed before this conversation, and I suppose looking at the whole the difference of people that nursing leadership. So you're talking about your student nurses, you're talking about your newly qualified, and you're talking about your people in management roles, clinical roles, senior clinical roles, whether it's research, whether it's academics in the university, whatever it is, we're all leaders of sorts. And I guess for me, one of the most important things about leadership is that reflective piece. And actually, obviously, the NMC code wants us all to be reflective practitioner, and part of our revalidation is that reflection. And I guess we all do reflect, but the importance of it in our clinical work and in our leadership role is really important, because I guess it's that whole COPE's learning cycle. How do you know what you've done, and how, if you've done it well, and how do you learn? And I guess whether you reflect immediately after it, or like me, every night when, you know, I'm lying in my bed trying to sleep, trying to put my phone down so that I don't get excitable by the lights on the phone, and I think about the day, that it'll go back to the day, and just reflecting on what's happened. And I think that that's the time to allow your brain to process what you've done, where you've made impact, where you've not, how you might have done things better, or how you might have done something really well, or how you impacted on other people. And I think that is a really important part, because we probably don't always think about our impact on people.
No.
So through reflection, I think you can see how you've impacted. So if you're a newly qualified, I'm sure you'll be reflecting writ large, because that reality shock for all the newly qualified that are coming into their posts in the next few weeks, you'll not think it's reflecting, though. You'll think you're picking everything to pieces and telling yourself how bad you are, but that is part of that learning, and it's about people to have the confidence to think and take time to think about what their day's been. And I think that's really important for leaders.
Yeah, definitely. And I like what you said about doing it sort of not unconsciously, that's the wrong word, but not formally, because I think people immediately think, all right, I need to pick a model and I need to get a bit of paper, or I need to open Word and, you know, stick it all down. But you don't, do you? You could just do it as you're driving home to Edinburgh, or if you are lying in bed, if that's, you know, if you need to do that to make sure you do get a good night's sleep. But do you think it's sometimes a word that's thrown about too much? Do you think, you know, people think that that's the go-to answer for some things, or do you think it's...
Yes, I think so. And I think of, obviously, as the board nurse director, all the Nursing Midwifery Council referrals come through my office, so I see every single one. And I guess the NMC are really hot on reflection, and it is right in that reflective piece. And certainly in my career, when I have been at investigations where things haven't gone as well as they should, and you know, I go by the rule that most people come to work not to harm patients. The majority of people come to work, and you know, if something happens, whether it's a system failure, whether it's a loss of concentration, whether, you know, human factors play a large part. So there's a big thing about reflection, and you're absolutely right, Brian. We look at reflection as, I need to write a journal, and I need to do it through a learning cycle or a reflective cycle. No, it's about, as you say, it's about driving in the car, it's about walking, it's about thinking. And you don't have to do it every day, because actually, once you get into the swing of it, you're doing it subconsciously anyway. As you said, I've done mindfulness before in my life, and I'm really bad at it. Because when you're lying there trying to do the mindfulness in a class, and they're saying, just let your thoughts go, and I keep thinking things. So your brain is always thinking, but actually the reflective piece isn't about writing a journal. It can be for some people, but it doesn't have to be. It's about giving yourself time, consciously or not, to think.
Right, that's really good. Thanks very much. What about your second point, Claire?
Again, thought a lot about this. Is, for me, leadership, one of the most important things in my leadership is about the relationships I make. And I would say that is probably true for anybody who works with, unless you're a person who works on your own in an office without anybody. We all have to build on relationships. And I think what's helped me throughout my career, and I would suggest others, is build the relationships with people. None of us can do this job on our own, and we need relationships. And we need relationships in our little team, whether it's our people that are on shift with us today, Brian, if we were on a ward. We don't have to be friends
No.
but we have to have respectful relationships, and we need to, I guess, be able to communicate and get on with others. And from my point of view, and even if as you go up, if you go up a management line, if you're a senior charge nurse, my best pals when I was senior charge nurse was the head of porter and the porter that came and picked up my linen bags, and my domestic,
Right.
and my estates guys, and my pharmacy guys, because you needed people to smoothly run your ward. So if I'd, as we did, overfilled the linen cupboard or overfilled the bags and they were too heavy, that relationship piece, you would be able to have a conversation about that rather than them refusing to pick up your linen. They would come and say, "Hi, Claire, that's too full." Or so I think that's because ultimately every other day we would have a chat as they came in to pick the linen bags up. And I know that's a tiny little example, Brian, but if you take that up massively to my level as a board nurse director, my relationships, for example, with the chief executives of the local authorities is really important, because if I'm needing support for something, I can go to them because we've made these relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we just have to acknowledge that nobody can do anything on their own, and relationships are really super important. So whatever your stage are in your leadership career, having relationships with people are really important.
I really like that. And I think it comes down a wee bit down to visibility, like you say, because and probably approachability, doesn't it? Because not everybody has a relationship as such with their board director, where I could maybe send you a message and say, Claire, what do you think about this? Now, hopefully, you won't be inundated with messages now, but not everybody will have that, and that shows that you're an open and transparent and approachable leader, as such. But the same with the porters and stuff, maybe they maybe wouldn't all feel able to approach that person in Burgundy or the person in Navy who's running a unit. So the fact that they can do that, I think, speaks volumes. Definitely. Okay, doke. So point three.
My point three is, I guess, continuous learning.
Right.
And I think I've spoken to you about this before, Brian. I did the old training in 1986. I trained at the Royal, where it was a sort of modular training, 2 weeks in college, 12 weeks on the ward, and that went on for 3 years. So it was much less time spent on the I guess the academic side and much more on the practical side.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go back and do my degree when I had a 1-year-old,
Oh gosh.
and a husband who worked away, and then and I did my degree, and everybody had to do their degree, I guess, in the day. That would be what, how old's Megan? That would be 1995, 1996. I was doing that.
Right.
And I wasn't really, I could never get my head around academia. I couldn't. And Aisha Holloway, who was my professor when I was doing my masters, will testify to that. I hated it, and I always used to say, if I ever need a masters, I'll get it on eBay. Actually, it'll not make me any better. I know
No.
what I know, and it's not going to change me. But then obviously I had to go and do my masters if I wanted to get promotion, and there
Mm-hmm.
was something in me that my husband, I met my husband, and he's got 2 masters, and quite a few of my pals were doing masters at the time, and they used to call it the Masters Club, and they said I couldn't get in it because I didn't have a masters, and I actually thought, well, I'm smarter than you all, but anyway. So I decided to do my masters at Edinburgh University in advanced nursing, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe the difference it made to my life.
Right.
It made to my how I thought, how much more confidence I had. Now that is learning of an academic style, and I guess the plug here is for, it is really hard for everybody. And while you might, as I was, sitting in my kitchen crying on a Saturday morning saying, I don't care about Harvard reference style, I know this is a fact, and why do I have to do that? There is something about that, picking up the book to study or going looking for the references and actually learning. But it made me a much better practitioner. And I've been in leadership roles since I did my masters, and before doing my masters, but knowing the research, knowing what's current, knowing where to find it,
Mm-hmm.
having different thoughts, being able to advance an argument, making your own decision. I think these are really important qualities of a leader. So that's the academic part of continuous learning. but also in my career. And I would say, and you've just done it. I mean, we spoke about this earlier before we came on this call. You have continuously learned since you qualified because you've gone to your first ward, you've done your learning and putting into practice what you've learned while you were at university. Then you've gone away to critical care where you've had to a really steep learning curve, really technical, sickest patients in the system. Now you're out in community, and there's something about that continuous learning, pushing yourself to feel uncomfortable, pushing yourself to learn. And that's what I mean. It's not, I'm not saying everybody has to go away and do a master's,
No.
but people who tend to stay in the one place for 30 years, yeah, they'll learn. I'm sure they'll learn. But it's that there's something about pushing yourself out your comfort zone. And I've been a bit like you, Brian, because this is my third exec director post. And my first one was at Borders. I'd come from the Royal Infirmary in Edinburgh as an associate nurse director, really, really busy site, big, massive teaching hospital board, down to the Borders, not teaching board, remote and rural, how they do it. So that was a huge cultural learn. Then I went to Scottish Ambulance Service, again, completely out of my comfort zone, national service. I wasn't a paramedic, very male dominated profession. And then I came to Tayside, back to the territorial teaching board. So all of these I continue to learn, and I think that is really important.
Good, yeah. And do you ever worry about that, Claire? Because I do worry that I jump ship a bit too soon, but I don't know what too soon is. I don't know if there's a number on something. I've always stayed a year, so I was a year in ortho, a year in ICU, and I've only just over a year actually in community, but just started my district nurse training. But I think, God, are people saying he can't, he just sits down and gets the seat hot and then he's away again. But I don't know if there's a time or a period or if I'm just overthinking it, but.
I guess, in my opinion, and I was about the same because I did 18 months in these two jobs before this job, or by the time I handed in my notice, it was 2 years. The jury's out, Brian, because back in the day when I qualified in 1989, you did a year medical, a year surgery, and then you decided what you were going to do. That was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's you need to stay to get to the top, a senior position. But I sit on the nursing and midwifery task force. And I am co-chairing with Eileen McKenna from Royal College of Nursing, the attraction subgroup.
Oh, yeah.
And we're looking at what we need to attract people in. And my sense is, and you're slightly older, so don't take this the wrong way, but
No.
the young people that we're trying to attract into nursing now will not do that job for their whole career.
No.
And there's something about what young people now, and I don't mean 15-year-olds, but I mean sort of like 18 to 25-year-olds, what they want now is not the same career. They want opportunities. They want to do what you've done. They want to try a bit of this, then try a bit of that, and then something else, and then decide what we want to do. So they talk now at this task force of not a career ladder, but a climbing frame where people jump on and off their career. My son, for example, trained as a mental health nurse, did it for 6 months, and then wanted to go to Thailand to do Muay Thai boxing. So jumped
Wow.
away to Thailand, did that for 6 months, came back, picked up some more. So he doesn't see himself as a nurse for the rest of his life, but he will use his nursing skills in whatever his career path is. So a long-winded answer to your question, no, I don't think there's a right or a wrong. And you've made purposeful decisions for what you've wanted to do. You've not just been like, oh, flighty, I don't want. You've got what you set out to do in your consolidation area. You then went to ICU, and I think you're right, a year to 18 months in ICU is probably enough. You just need to learn how to look after the critically ill patient. So no, I think, I think people are different than I was. I've 38 years on the 18th of August since I started nursing. And
Right. Wow.
well, it's not quite the only job I've done. I worked in the education department before I get into do my training, but 38 years in a job, that will not be common 40 years from now. People will not do 38 years in one profession.
No, definitely not. And that's good to hear because I see a lot on the likes of Twitter or whatever you call it now, X, and people worry about is it too soon to apply. So I'm sure those points, Claire, will be really helpful for people who listen. Okay, doke. So that was reflection, relationships, and continuous learning. Amazing. So, will we jump onto your two good examples of when leaderships went well in your time as a leader or your time as a nurse, even?
Cool. I'll do see now how you phrased that question, I can loads of examples were
Oh,
popping in
sorry.
my head. I'll sit with the two that
Okay.
I've got, and then I might, if we've got time, I might just say one when I was a no, in fact, I'll just stick with two. So this you probably this will resonate with you. So I started in Tayside in 2020 in the January, and we hit the COVID pandemic in the March, and it all went to hell in a handcart. So my first year was very much command and control.
Yep.
And if you remember back to January 2021, we were going into the second wave of the pandemic, and there was a big hoo-ha because all the student nurses started their the new people coming in to be a student started in the August, September of 2020 to do nursing. So it's not, they weren't going for Freshers Week, they weren't going to the halls, they weren't doing any of that. They were sitting in their house like we are, listening to lectures about something that they wanted to do as a profession. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of chat about the students were coming out on their first placement in the January of 2021, and absolute no from everybody. Absolutely not. This is crazy. This is not what we want to do. The nurses are fatigued. They've not got the time to train to support the students, and the universities were scared. And I was like, well, right, everybody take a breath, mm-hmm. because we've sort of we've gone through all this. And if we don't, in my strategic head, I'm thinking 3 years hence. Yeah. If we don't get these guys and girls out in to practice, what are we going to produce 3 years from now? Mm-hmm. We're going to produce people who a year into their, because when is it going to be over? Because at this time, remember, we kept getting locked down and locked up and all. So my sense was, no, we need to get them out. And everybody, not everybody, most people strongly disagreed with me.
Right.
Absolutely not. The staff in the ward are just far too stressful and blah, 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 blah. So I guess for me, I had to do, when I think about authentic leadership, I had to do that active listening. I had to hear what people were saying to me. And the nurses and the senior nurses on the board were saying, no, the charge nurses all hate this. It's a terrible decision. Universities were a bit twitchy. Don't know what the students thought, actually. Mm-hmm. But I knew that my son actually at the time was a second year student. So he was my reference point, and he was like, Mum, I mean, he'd been at work through it all because they'd offered them the band fours. Yep. So in my head, I'm like, look, so I decided we were doing it, and we were bringing the students into practice. And right. I'd obviously explained to my team, I had to explain to my team, because bear in mind, I've got my nurse directors below me, and then we've got lead nurses, and then senior nurses, and then senior charge nurses, and then ward staff. Explain to my team, and like we had the chat, we had the open and honest conversation. I was very aware of where their anxieties were coming from. I said, look, if there's going to be a problem with senior charge nurses, I'll meet them. But that's the only way I can quell this. I'll get them on a Teams call, and I'll explain my position. And if they can talk me round, I can be talked round, because the one thing about me is I don't have a fixed view. I'll make a decision, but I can be easily turned if it's the wrong decision. Right. So we met with the senior charge nurses, and to be fair, they did the weird, but they saw the sense, and I sold it to them that you're going to have new people coming in who are enthusiastic, scared but enthusiastic, but they'll be able to support the team because they'll be part of your team. And if you bring them in now, this is, and then I'm sure I met with this is the menopause. I'm sure I met with the students as well. I can't remember, like it's 3 years ago. I met with the students coming in, and I met with the students when they left to find out how it had been. And to be fair, it was a risk. It was a risk because obviously people were anxious, and mums and dads, the student nurses, had a few letters from them saying, why are you doing this? I said, because if you want to be a nurse, you can't sit in your bedroom on a Zoom call.
No, exactly.
So I guess that showed that whole active listening. The transparency is really important to me. This is the reason I want to do this is because if we don't, what are we going to have? Because I'm thinking ahead. Yeah. The numbers of students gone down. What are we going to do? So I did it, and it worked. But there was a few sleepless nights because I thought, what if something happens to one of them? I've effectively pushed them into this position. Mm-hmm. Right. And I knew in my heart of hearts, they would follow the precautions, they'd be well supported, and then what if it all went belly up? But it didn't, and I guess these people came out the other side, and are now our staff nurses. So that was one of my little
Well,
things.
definitely. No, it's a good example, absolutely. And my granda used to always say, I always get it the wrong way around because I don't speak in old money, but he used to always say, is that an ounce of practice is worth a pound of theory. And like you were saying earlier, I get that there's a place for theory, but you could read 55 textbooks, or it's manual handling is the perfect example, Claire, or BLS. You do your training with the trainer, and it's amazing, and it's all very formal. And then you have a cardiac arrest that's a patient wrapped around the toilet. It never works. It's never the textbook example. So I really like that, and I agree because I worry even now about students maybe not getting as long on placement as they would probably like, and some of the university modules being a bit questionable. But who am I to who am I to question them? But I think there would probably be I would have probably done with another 4 weeks on placement on learning about Florence Nightingale. But there we are. And it goes back to your thing about, was there or is there, and I know we're looking at that more and more, aren't we, about sort of apprenticeship nursing and getting people in different ways because they just don't meet the academic bar. And we know we've got some amazing non-registered staff. I never know what the good term for these people, these amazing healthcare assistants are, because some people call them untrained, and I think there's nothing untrained about a healthcare
No,
assistant.
they're
You
definitely
know,
not registered, but I'm with you.
And they
And I
can't get
think
in, Claire. They can't get in because they
yeah,
don't have whatever it is now, 3As and 2Bs or whatever it is. I don't know. But you think that would be the next amazing nurse, and they can't get in because of a daft academic requirement.
yeah. But I guess there is widening access, and
Yeah.
as part of the attraction sub group, we're looking at regulated nursing support workers. We're looking at our band 4 assistant practitioners because on like it or lump it, the numbers of people going into nursing has reduced dramatically, and we've had another very poor yield and they're going to clearing. So 3 years from now, we're going to have a problem. 2 years from now, in fact, next year, we've not got the numbers in the last 3 years. Now, I am absolutely for a graduate profession, 100%,
Oh, yeah.
but not everything we do in a day, whatever field of nursing we are in, requires a graduate, and there's something for these supportive roles to support the registrant.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I like what you said there because that's my thing. I like the assistant practitioner role if it's in addition to, not in replacement
It's
of.
not in
No,
replacement.
yeah, definitely
Yeah.
not. Okay, so second example then.
I guess this is another, they're all COVID, they're all
Yeah,
in this role in COVID. So the COVID was in the March, and in the May, bear in mind I'm in the board 5 months. So in the May, there comes a diktat from Scottish Government. Because you're an exec director, you're a government appointment.
right.
So there's only X amount of executive directors on the board. There's the medical, in our board, there's the nurse, the medic, the public health, the finance, and the chief exec. So there's 5 executive directors, voting members of the board, government appointments.
Okay.
So with being a government appointment, you kind of, my boss is the chief exec, but the chief nursing officer can pull my strings.
Right.
That's how it goes. And if I were asked to go somewhere else or do something else, because I'm a government appointment, they can ask me to do something if it's reasonable. So when I
Right.
was working in Scottish Ambulance Service, they said, the CNO phoned me and said, look, we've not got a nurse director in Tayside, they've struggled to recruit, would you go? It was
Ah.
kind of a rhetorical question. And I said yes, because it's the right thing to do. But I live in Edinburgh and it's Dundee. And she went, yeah, no. So bear in mind that's the optics. That's the world I live in.
Right.
So there was obviously the real concern about residents in care homes and how they were coping in the pandemic. And this is early pandemic, May 2020. So you've got lots of independent care homes all over Scotland trying to manage this. And you know how hard you were in Tayside. You know how hard it was for us in a massive big organisation trying to make sure people had the right training, the right PPE, the right equipment, getting the time off, what if people were off sick, all that to care for our patients. And bear in mind, we'd cleared a lot of our beds in order to accept patients, and we downstreamed quite a few patients to care homes. So Scottish Government were obviously really concerned about care homes at that time, and they felt and infection control isn't something that is top priority in a care home prior to pandemic.
No.
But due pandemic, it was extremely important. So the decision was made by Scottish Government to ask the exec nurse directors and the board to take on care homes. And we got a letter on the Friday to say, as from Monday, we'll take on it, but roughly, but it was like, it wasn't let's think about this.
No.
Will you, the variation order is basically they changed your job description to say you need to support the care homes. Now, every nurse director in Scotland thought this absolutely the right thing to do, because they're residents, they're Tayside residents for me, and if anything we can do to help, this was great. We've got the letter, so therefore we've got the authority to support, but it's how the support worked out. So, of course, care homes are commissioned by the chief officers in the health and social care partnerships, and the chief social work officers, a lot of the oversight over it. So suddenly, government have come in and said, Claire's het for the oversight of infection control, support and staffing, and fundamentals of care. So that caused a bit of a sushi.
Oh, absolutely.
Because why are you getting to be? I'm not in charge. So the long-winded story, all this blah, blah, blah. So bottom line is, it was about the relationship.
Right.
Because you've got, in Tayside, I've got 3 chief officers and 3 chief social work officers. So that's 6 people. There's 1 me, and there's 1 medical director, and there's 1 public health director, but it predominantly sat with me. So I had to go into meetings with people who were like, I don't understand why you've got it. Neither do I. But we are where we are. And I guess it was, and Jackie Pepper, who's the chief officer in Perth and Kinross, and I made a really, really strong relationship through that, because she was the chief social worker officer at the time. And it was about, I guess it was about us wrestling the problem as a group, and me having to have and I didn't know any of these people because we'd been put into pandemic, so everything was Teams. I couldn't just sit you down with a coffee and say, look, Brian, how are we going to fix this? So Jackie and I had loads of conversations, and we set up WhatsApp, and it was the relationships were the important thing, because everybody knew intellectually it was the right thing to do, because it was bringing in more support. But emotionally, how very dare government give the nurse director? But from my point of view, I inherited effectively 102 extra wards overnight. And we take your responsibility very seriously. I'm a registrant. I need to ensure. So how did I possibly have sight on all of that? And that's where the relationships with brilliant chief social work officers, brilliant chief officers and their teams in health and social care partnership, we just had to work together. And the relationships we built, and having tough conversations, and I'll have a tough conversation. I don't relish it, but it's part of my role and my leadership. I'll do it. So a lot of the conversation started with, Brian, I never asked for this. And it's probably not what we would do if we weren't in a global pandemic, but how are we going to work through it? So yeah, that's my example just of that leadership. And even at my level, it was a holy crap moment, because how am I going to be able to do this? But I didn't do it myself. I did it through my relationships with people.
Oh, wow. I like that. And
I've still got it. And I've still got the care. I've still got
Oh, have you still got it? You never got
it.
Oh, God, you still got 102 extra words.
Yeah.
So probably a bit of collective leadership there then. And I know that's not your chosen leadership style, but, looking at what you've got, and you probably do this every day in Tayside where you're lead nurses and things, and where I struggled a bit with this joining as a trainee district nurse, because I didn't have heaps and bounds of community nursing experience, and didn't have heaps and bounds of nursing experience because I am 3 years out the door. So, I did get questioned as, why you? You came from ICU. What could you bring as a trainee district nurse? But that's where it is, where you highlight what you can, but also highlight what other people can. So you don't take it away from them. I'm rubbish at. I'm trying to think what I'm rubbish at. I mean, it sounds a bit funny, but I'm not great with wounds. So I know that one of the nurses in my team loves wounds, but doesn't like palliative care. So if me and her are on, I'll see the palliative patients and she'll see the wounds.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
why would you, what, you wouldn't send an orthopedic ward to dialysis and say, right, that's you for the next month, you would send. So yeah, I like that, definitely. Right, so what is your chosen leadership style, Claire? Do you have one, or is it fluid, or we all know
It,
what
it's
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 fluid.
definitely there's definitely a high resonance with authentic because
Mm-hmm.
I am authentic. I will give a bit of myself. I am honest, and I guess there's no sides to me in terms of whoever you are, I will be the same.
Right.
Um, and it's that self-awareness and reflection. But authenticity is very important to me. And I was sort of talking to one of my team about this meeting, and I was saying I'm really kind, and they went, "No, kind isn't what we would say." And I was like, "I am kind, though." I said, you're not unkind, but you're authentic."
Right.
So yes, I think authentic leadership.
Okay, doke. Have you got any examples of it, or?
Well, I think the examples I've given you there, but I think
Yeah.
it's about that. It's about that ability to have the relationships, have enough self-awareness, be able to listen to people and to be able to support people to come with you.
Mm-hmm. No,
I
yeah.
don't do it. Command and control was very difficult for me in COVID because it's not my style.
Mm-hmm.
And I was much more like there'll be a consensus to a point, and if I have to make the decision, I'll do it. But it's about being honest and accepting that I don't know all the answers. I don't know the answers. I didn't know the answers to the care home. Uh, I don't know all the answers, but I have people around me that can support me.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. That makes sense, yeah. And you said at the start you're retiring, so what is your plans for retirement? You'll probably people seem to retire but then come back even busier. No, no, is that you?
Definitely not. It's definitely not my plan. We had one of my brother-in-law had a brain tumor, which is okay at the moment. But he was diagnosed with a brain tumor a couple of years ago, and it just was one of these moments of, gosh, that happens to people. That happens to my family. I've got a granddaughter. I've got elderly parents in London, parents-in-law in London, parents in Edinburgh, and I just think, do you know what? I'm 56. I've done 38 years. My pension's all right. I'm going to go and enjoy my life,
Definitely.
because I don't want to be living with regret. And I've loved my job. I still love my job, and I keep having moments. I was quite teary coming up the road in the car this morning because I was on my own
Oh.
listening to Taylor Swift, thinking, God, I'm
Ah!
retiring in 18 days. But I'm going to travel. My husband and I are going to Spain for 9 weeks to travel
Oh,
around
amazing.
Spain with our backpacks. Then it'll be Christmas. Then we're going to Cambodia and Vietnam to do
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of that. Just living life, Brian.
That's
Hope
what it's
staying out
about.
of hospital, hopefully. But I don't have any intention to work, but we'll
No.
see.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, you've probably ended on a bit of gratitude there with what you said, but if we do end on a bit of gratitude, Claire, what are you most grateful for in your life?
Being a nurse.
Being a
At the
nurse.
moment, well, in this conversation,
Yeah.
I'm grateful for my family
Oh, yeah.
and friends and things, but I have loved every moment of being a nurse. I genuinely have, and it's been such a privilege. My hematology oncology was my background when I was a clinical nurse, and some of the patients and their families I met, and some of the really difficult times that I got to share with patients was an absolute privilege, and I've loved every moment of being a nurse. So yeah, immensely grateful.
Great. That's amazing. Well, thanks for taking the time out your busy day. I hope your next 18 days goes well.
Not that I'm counting.
No, not that you're counting. And you'll not have that drive to do. I drive to Kinross every day and think that's bad enough, but gosh, that must be hellish. But
It's all
that
right. You got to listen to good music, loud music. It's a nice straight road.
definitely.
Thanks very much, Brian, and I'll hopefully see you before I go.
Yeah, thank you. I'll stop recording now, Claire. Cheers.
Okay.
So, in today's final episode of the season, we spoke to Claire Pearce, the Executive Nurse Director at NHS Tayside, and it was an amazing conversation where Claire talked us through her 3 leadership tips for all us aspiring leaders, her 2 leadership examples, which were really interesting, and then her leadership style. It's always quite hard to pick a leadership style because, nobody really sticks to one, but Claire talks about being that authentic leader. So we really hope you enjoyed the episode today, and you tune in with us next year where we'll interview some more amazing leaders across the UK in healthcare and nursing. Please do check out the other episodes, and I hope to see you soon.